Welcome back. This is our final explainer in the Docker Foundation series, and today, we are tackling a problem that I guarantee every single Docker user runs into, the mystery of the disappearing disk space. We're not just going to show you how to clean up the mess. Oh no, we're going to show you how to prevent it from ever happening again. This is how you go from being a Docker user to a Docker Pro.
So, picture this. You've been playing around with Docker for a few weeks, right? You're building images, you're running containers, everything's awesome. And then, bam, you get that disk space low warning. Sound familiar? Yep, it's a classic sign that all that Docker debris has started to pile up. So, what is this debris I'm talking about? Well, it's all the stuff Docker kind of leaves behind. You've got dangling images from old builds, containers that you stopped but never actually removed, volumes that aren't attached to anything anymore, and build caches that have just gotten huge. You know, the analogy I love is the kitchen after you've been cooking for a month. It's just full of unused ingredients and dirty dishes. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to put on our detective hats and figure out what's going on. Then we'll master the art of Docker cleanup. This is the fun part. And finally, and this is really the most important part, we're going to shift into pro mode and look at best practices to keep your system lean and mean right from the get-go.
All right, let's get into it. Before we start deleting anything, we need to know exactly where all that precious disk space has vanished to.
Your number one tool, your superpower for this, is the command docker systemdf. This thing gives you this fantastic, high-level summary of exactly where your disk space is going in Docker. You can see your images, your containers, your volumes, but look, the column you really care about is reclaimable. That's pure gold. That tells you how much space you can get back, like right now.
That summary is great. It tells us what's taking up space. But to find out why, we got to dig a little deeper. So let's zoom in and see the individual culprits that are hogging our disk.
So just by adding a V for verbose, you get this incredibly detailed breakdown. Now you can see exactly which images are adding to that big reclaimable number. And do you see these ones here, where the repository and tag are just none? Yep, those are the infamous dangling images. They are our prime suspects.
So what in the world is a dangling image? Well, think of it this way. Every time you build a new version of your image, Docker creates new layers. The old layers from the previous build, they can get left behind, kind of orphaned without a tag. They're not being used by anything, so they just sit there, silently eating up your disk space. These are the absolute easiest targets for our cleanup.
All right, we've identified the culprits. Now for the really satisfying part, the cleanup. Let's get to know the prune commands. Trust me, these are about to become your new best friends for Docker hygiene.
This slide right here is your ultimate cleanup toolkit. Think of container prune as the command for clearing out all those containers you stopped and totally forgot about. Image prune is like our sniper rifle for taking out those dangling images we just found. And system prune, that's your trusty multi-tool. It hits containers, images, and networks all in one shot. It's probably the one you're going to use the most.
Okay, now a very important word of caution here. The system prune command, when you combine it with the -a and the -volumes flags is, well, it's the nuclear option. It will remove all unused images, not just the dangling ones, and more importantly, it will vaporize any volumes not currently attached to a container. You have to be super careful with this one, because you could accidentally delete that database you were working on.
The key takeaway here is to just make this a habit. Seriously, don't wait for that disk full warning to pop up. Just run a quick Docker system prune maybe once a week. Think of it as 5 seconds of maintenance that's going to save you hours of headaches down the road.
So cleaning up is good, but you know what's better? Not making the mess in the first place. This is where you really level up as a developer. Let's shift gears and look at the best practices that the pros use to build efficient, small, and secure Docker images right from the start.
First tip, and it's a big one, stop using the latest tag. I know it feels convenient, but it makes your builds so unpredictable, because latest can point to a totally different image tomorrow than it does today. Be specific. Using a version tag like Python 3.11 Slim not only makes your builds totally reproducible, it also often gets you a much smaller final image.
Okay, this next tip is an absolute game changer for your build times. Docker's layer caching is brilliant, but you gotta use it right. The trick is to order your instructions from the stuff that changes the least to the stuff that changes the most. So install your dependencies first, then copy your application code at the end.
Oh, and see how we chain the run commands with and then clean up in the same line? That creates a single, super efficient layer and keeps your image size way down.
A Docker ignore file is basically a .git ignore for your Docker builds. It just tells Docker, hey, leave this stuff out. This is so crucial for keeping your images small and secure. You definitely don't want things like your entire .git history or your secret .in files accidentally ending up inside your final image.
This one is a massive security win, and it is so easy to do. By default, processes inside a container run as the all-powerful root user, which is a major security risk. But just by adding a new user and then switching to it with the user command, you dramatically reduce the potential attack surface of your container. It's a no-brainer.
Multi-stage builds are honestly one of my favorite Docker features for creating tiny production images. Here's the idea. You use one stage, the builder stage, that has all the big, bulky tools you need to build your app, compilers, testing stuff, all of it. Then, you start a brand new, fresh, minimal stage, like a tiny Alpine Linux image, and you copy only the finished app from that builder stage. The result? A tiny, secure, production-ready image without any of the junk you don't need.
Okay, so our Dockerfile is now a masterpiece of efficiency. But building a great image is really only half the battle. Now let's talk about some best practices for actually running those containers.
You know, just a few simple flags can make your life so much easier. Give your containers a memorable name with -name so you're not trying to remember those random hashes. For quick one-off tasks, use the -rm flag, and Docker will automatically clean up the container as soon as it's done. If you've got data that needs to live on past the container, like a database, use volumes. And to be a good neighbor on your host machine, limit resources with -memory and -CPUs.
We are almost at the finish line. Let's wrap this all up with a final lightning round of tips focused on super easy ways to improve the security of your Docker environment.
Here are 5 things you can start doing right now. 1. Keep your base images updated to get the latest security patches. 2. Scan your images for known vulnerabilities with tools like Docker Scout. 3. Never ever hardcode secrets. Use environment files. 4. If a container doesn't need to write to its own file system, run it as read-only. And finally, only expose the ports your application absolutely needs and nothing more.
So let's just quickly recap the most important points. Make cleanup a regular habit with Docker System Prune. Build smarter, not harder, using specific tags, good layer caching, and multi-stage builds. Run your containers efficiently by naming them and managing their resources. And above all, always prioritize security in everything you build and everything you run. And with that, a huge congratulations! You have officially completed the Docker Foundation series. You've learned the fundamentals, and now you have the best practices to work cleanly and professionally. You are in a fantastic spot to continue your journey towards the Docker Certified Associate exam. Next up for us is the Docker Intermediate playlist, so make sure you're subscribed for more DevOps excellence. Thanks so much for watching.